Dominic Carter, Talk Radio 77 WABC. I have been covering New York for more than 35 years, and I have seen the homeless problem go from bad to worse. Frankly, that would be perhaps the understatement of the year. And that's why I'm so looking forward to this conversation. It is with Áine Duggan. She is the president and CEO of the New York-based Partnership for the Homeless. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Dominic, and thanks for having this important conversation.
So in 2021, to answer my question, how bad is the homeless problem?
Well, you know, the irony of the current moment is that we've seen the numbers of people in the shelters and on the streets going down, and what it really speaks to is the success of prevention, because due to the eviction moratorium in the city, there are less people ending up at the front doors of the shelter system. I think the big worry, though, is that there isn't really a robust enough plan in terms of what happens when the eviction moratorium ends. And I think we could be looking at, a tsunami of evictions and a level of homelessness, the like of which the city has never experienced before, unless, the state and federal government kick in with rental assistance and unless we see a plan to keep people in their homes.
And so when you say like we have never seen before, give me an idea. I'm trying to picture this in my mind, considering that we're radio. And, of course, we don't want a doomsday scenario, but I'm just trying to deal with realistically, once these moratoriums, these eviction moratoriums are over, what's the possibility?
So the numbers, often statistics can be quite boring, right? But sometimes the numbers do help to give people a picture. So right now there's about 50,000 people inside in the shelter system in New York. And at its height, I would say, it was just over the 60,000 mark. That's kind of the record level.
Wow.
But at the moment in arrears in New York, you have over 1 million people in arrears in New York City at the moment. Now, they won't all end up in evictions. They won't all end up in housing court. But even a tiny percentage of those 1 million ending up in evictions means that you have a shelter system that will be overburdened overnight, and you'll have people ending up on the street without anywhere else to go. And I think the silver lining in this is it's a completely avoidable, preventable problem.
But one more time, maybe I didn't hear clearly, but I think I did. You said that currently, and you said that all of them won't end up being homeless, but I want to make sure I heard this right. You said there are 1 million tenants in New York or people in New York that are in the arrears as it relates to their rent payments or mortgage payments?
Right, as it relates to rent payments,
Okay.
There are over 1 million in arrears.
Is that normal? Is that number traditional, or that's the doomsday scenario you were talking about potentially?
Right. This is a direct result of the financial impact of COVID, right? People losing work and not being able to keep up with rent payments. I think, the other thing to bear in mind is that the economic fallout of COVID is hitting the very same families and communities that really took the brunt of the health crisis of COVID. And so these are already individuals and families who've been hurt pretty badly by the past year and a half. And it really is incumbent on all of us to make sure that they don't take the brunt of the economic fallout as well.
Wow. We are talking with Áine Duggan. She is the president and CEO of the New York-based Partnership for the Homeless. What is the face, if you will, of homelessness, and can you shift the entire perspective about people experiencing homelessness?
Well, I think, one of the things that happens is that when people hear the word homeless or homelessness, there's a particular image that comes to their mind, probably the last person that they walked by on the street. And, what's helpful to remember is that street homelessness in New York represents less than 10% of the overall picture. The vast majority of people experiencing homelessness in New York are families. And in fact, of the 50,000 people in the shelter system at the moment, more than 2/3 are in the family shelters. and 15,000 of them are children. So it really is a picture of children and families. What's really shocking about the numbers as well is that homelessness, in a way, is just a manifestation of the deep racism sort of at the root of housing policy for many generations in this country, because more than 90% of people inside in the shelter system identify as people of color. And as you know yourself, that is disproportionate when it comes to the population of the city. And the other reality is that most of the households are headed up by women. So, you really are seeing the sort of intersection of racism and sexism coming into play in terms of, our systems. And so it is, as I say, it is a preventable problem. And really, it's a question of who are we saying is not deserving of a home, and how can we do better as a society,
I still can't believe the numbers that you just cited. Just one more time, of how many people are in the shelters and how many children. One more time, please.
So at the moment, there are about 50,000 in shelters throughout the city, and 15,000 are children. Again, these numbers have gone down since the eviction moratorium has been in place. I think one of the ironies of the current moment is that the moratorium is proving to us that prevention works. It will bring the numbers down. And really what we just need to see at this point is how do you match the eviction moratorium with a robust rental assistance program that can help people stay in their homes?
And is that what homeless prevention looks like in your professional opinion?
So a lot of the work that we do at the partnership is about providing rental assistance to families who are in arrears so that they can avoid being evicted, they can avoid housing court. And, one of the things to remember about rental assistance is that it's a win-win for everybody because it keeps the family in their home. It means that the landlord is getting paid, particularly for small landlords, they can keep paying their bills. And it means that important housing stays in the market. So that's one way, right? It's about keeping people in the homes that they have. And then the other way that prevention works is keeping homes in New York affordable. And by which I mean investments in affordable housing, investments in supportive housing, essentially making sure that the stock of housing in the city matches the sort of spectrum of income and wages in the city.
The issue of dealing with the homeless with Áine Duggan, the CEO of the New York Partnership for the Homeless. Coming up later tonight, Frank Morano and the Other Side of Midnight. Among Frank's topics, UFOs, how the ceasefire is going in the Middle East, and Lauren Conlon, the WABC entertainment correspondent, will join him. Also, the Chronicles of Dominic Carter, the race for New York City mayor. We are back with the issue of the homeless with Áine Duggan of the Partnership for the Homeless. And so as I continue with my questions, how has the partnership been helping New Yorkers during this pandemic?
Well, one of the ways that we look at the work at the partnership is that we're really a conduit for New Yorkers. And what I mean by that is it is literally a partnership in terms of the people who are donating money and the people who need temporary assistance. What we've seen during the pandemic is a level of generosity that's just astounding. It doesn't surprise me. I've been doing this work for a long time. New Yorkers are very generous. And we've seen a lot of people stepping up, people from $10 donors to, tens of thousands of donations in terms of making sure that people have access to funding to help them pay their rent. And so because of that generosity, we've been able to help a lot more families who suddenly find themselves in arrears. And our philosophy has been that we keep paying the arrears sort of regardless of the moratorium so that the families can stay safely housed and they don't have the stress of the arrears bill, building up. And that also the small landlords are getting paid and that they can keep on top of their mortgage, they can keep on top of other housing bills that they have. And a lot of the institutions, the foundations, the private corporations who support the work, they understand that, they understand the ecosystem that housing is and that helping tenants means helping landlords, means keeping housing in the market, and that it's very important that we keep that sort of peace and play for everybody.
The conversation is with Áine Duggan. She is the president and CEO of the New York Partnership for the Homeless. Now, your organization does work with clients and their landlords, correct?
That's correct. You know, when we're doing rental assistance, if a family is in arrears, we're helping them pay off the arrears, and we deal directly with the landlord. So you're paying the bill directly to the landlords to make sure that everything happens in an efficient way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So now, here's the $1 million question that I have, and you're the most qualified person I can think of to answer this question. Why is the problem of the homeless never going away? It just seems to keep going on and on and on. Why can't we solve this problem as a society, as New Yorkers?
Well, I think it comes down to something very simple, actually. It comes down to believing or not believing that we can solve it. You know, if you don't believe that you can do something, you've got no chance of doing it. But if you believe that you can achieve an end to homelessness, then you're halfway there. You know, in terms of the bricks and mortar issue, how to do the investments in affordable housing, investing in prevention, rental assistance, legal assistance, there are many plans out there. All of them are good. Different organizations have different plans. All of those measures work. They've been proven to work. But what we need is both the belief that it's possible and then the political will to invest in the solutions that work. And that's why part of the work at the partnership is having conversations like this. It's about engaging the public in a different way, so that they can understand what homelessness is, that it's about children, it's about families, it's about the need for affordable homes. And then it's about, all of us as a society putting the collective pressure on our leaders to invest in housing and invest in solutions that work, primarily prevention.
I'd like to ask you this question, and we are talking to Áine Duggan. She is the president and CEO of the Partnership for the Homeless in New York. It seems very logical that it actually saves money by investing in prevention than by providing shelter and support services on the backside once people are forced from their homes. So I think you alluded to this when you said the political will, but I don't understand why we're not putting money on the front side rather than spending triple on the backside.
Well, it's exactly that, right? It costs a lot more to allow a family to experience homelessness than to prevent the problem from happening. So to give you an example of that, most of the families who come to us for assistance, the average rent that they pay is about $1,700 a month, which means it's costing about $20,000 a year to keep them in housing. Whereas if they are allowed to experience homelessness and end up in the shelter system, it costs approximately $68,000 a year to provide shelter. And that's a cost that the city and the state have to pick up. So it makes economic sense. It's the most cost-effective way to solve homelessness is to prevent it. It's also the most humane thing to do. When the most humane thing to do matches up with the most cost-effective thing to do, then it really just comes down to political will.
Wow. Is there something, but before I wrap this up, how can people get in touch with you, with your organization, should they need to do so, if they need help?
Well, we absolutely encourage anybody who's in arrears and who needs assistance to contact us. They can call us at 212-645-3444. Or if it's easier, people can email us at info@pfth.org, PFTH being the acronym for Partnership for the Homeless.
Áine Duggan, the president and CEO of the Partnership for the Homeless, I thank you for your time. And, I noticed that you received your college education in Dublin. And you've also worked for the New York organization that helps feed people that are hungry. You were a vice president there. We thank you for all your service and what you're doing for people in need. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dominic. Really appreciate the conversation tonight.
Again, Áine Duggan, the president and CEO of the Partnership for the Homeless. Time for a break here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. When we come back, the Chronicles of Dominic Carter, the latest on the race for New York City mayor.